have a sign that just says no smoking, or do you want to do nothing? Mark?
I'll make a motion, the town purchases and installs 2 signs, one on Stone Wharf, one on Cousins, when entering the ramp, no smoking beyond this point.
Okay, so it's not on the wharf, it's just on the ramp?
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second to that? Okay, seeing no second. It dies for lack of a second. Is there anyone else who has a motion they want to make about this? Okay, so I guess no one wants to take a stand on this. Bo?
I'd like for us to first get in touch with Yarmouth and just full disclosure on what we're doing. I don't want to have a note later on from either Nat or the harbor master on that side, or I don't know what else, but I just don't want to.
Okay, I can email
Step on
Nat.
anybody's toes.
I can talk to Nat tomorrow and find out, and we can revisit this. Bob Ernest has a note in the chat which says, after some initial resistance, it seems the signs and policies about masking are working. Hopefully a smoking policy will work and the community can gently remind each other in similar fashion. There may always be resistance to such policy, but it doesn't hurt to try. So that's Bob Ernest's thought. And so I will talk to Nat and we can revisit this at the next meeting. And I skipped over because we had some issues with the agenda. Vika, did you have anything you wanted to say? Do you want to
I have a
report
couple
on-
of things that I was going to mention to you guys. I don't know if you want me to do
Yeah, I'm gonna
now
take her
or
out
if you
of
want me to
order.
wait until communications.
No, why don't you do it now while we have people here?
Sure. All right. So I have 3 things that I just wanted to update you on. The first one was that I spoke with Kevin Sharp, who is the name that was provided from Richardson Boatyard in reference to the motor that is needed for the Harbor Master boat. And you had asked me to look into whether there is any kind of financing. So they are willing to work with us. That's the good news. They expect 10% down up front. The unfortunate part is the final payment needs to be made before they can place the order for the engine. So that really doesn't help us to get the engine here in time before the season starts. Basically the decision that needs to be made is whether it needs to be bought in this season, wherever the money would come from it, or if it's something that you choose to purchase and budget for next year, then obviously that motor is not going to be here in time for the beginning of the summer.
Vika, do we have any money in the Harbor Master budget in the last town meeting for a motor? Because I know last year we were looking for one.
What we have right now in the Harbor Master vessel and equipment, we have $6,500 in it right now. And so the discussion was that we put another $6,000 for a total of a little over $12,000 for it. The problem is we wouldn't have that money available until after July 1st. If we then place the order and pay for it, then they would order it once the full payment is received. But then currently those motors are on at least 6 to 8 week, back order for the product. And so the discussion that we had last time, if we do this the beginning of July, we're not going to have a motor in time for the summer at all. And so we had talked to see if there's any way where we can pay for some of it now, pay for some of it later. And that wasn't an option. They need the money up front for the full amount before they can order the motor that we need.
So just to follow up on that, so was that from the capital budget or was that from the operating budget?
That was from the capital budget.
What about the operating
budget?
Because what I was going to say is last year we had an arrangement, we were going to pay Gennaro to use his boat and then we never did. So I was just wondering how much money was left over from that.
We paid him $3,000 to use his boat. I believe I would have to double check on the numbers. I'm
Do we
looking,
actually-
I
do we
have
pay
the budget in front of me right now, and we have $14,000 for the whole entire budget that's unexpended, but majority of that is going to go towards the salary. So when it comes to the harbor master budget itself, there is no money in that budget for a $6,000 expense.
Okay, Bo had his hand up.
Yes, I'm just wondering what kind of price did he give you?
So the quote that we had was $12,196.90. And what we have in the capital right now is a little over $6,500. And so we're about $6,000 short of needing the money to purchase that.
So we could take it out of the selectmen's contingency. That would be one place where it could come from. But did we actually pay the $3,000 to Gennaro? Because I thought his boat didn't work. We weren't able to use it.
We did, and I would have to double check. It was either $2,000 or $3,000, but I do remember issuing that check.
Okay, Bo and then Jen.
So just another two things. Is the boat worth putting that engine on? Does anybody?
That's something that I would have to double check with Gennaro. I don't know. I would assume so, seeing as this discussion is coming up, but I can't say for certain because I don't know.
Okay, and Bob Ernest got a chat. He wrote, New Meadows Marina sometimes has scratch and dent engines at a discount in stock. They are the master dealer for Maine. I got a few of my 150 by going scratch and dent. Might not hurt to call. Jill runs sales and has been good to Shabiggers. So just putting it out there.
Okay, Jen?
Thank you, Bob.
So I'm concerned because Gennaro's boat never went in the water last year. So we paid him regardless. I don't quite understand that. And then the other thing I was going to say is, you know, you have to have Richardson install the engine. So somehow that boat has got to get up to Richardson's to install it, I'm assuming, because I don't think they would come down and install it. So.
All right, so I guess we have some questions and we'll bring this back up at the next meeting. Can you get more information, Vika, and find out what the story was on that money that we paid Gennaro?
I asked him earlier this week about that. I said, you know, how many times was your boat used? He said when he didn't have availability to his boat, he always had a boat that was available to him to borrow. So that's what I got from that answer.
Okay. Mark?
I would also suggest making a call to New Meadows Marina. That's the marina, that's the boat sales place right up on Route 1 at the top of the hill, but by the big Indian statue.
I can do that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions about the motor before Vika goes to the next item? Okay, seeing none.
All right, the next item is, you had asked me to touch base with Lionel Plant about the increase. I spoke to Coley and the prices are in fact going up 10%. He said that because he is aware of the fact that we work on a budget system, even though these prices went into effect January 1st of this year, he is holding our increases until July 1st so we can properly budget for those increases for the next year. So that's something we need to keep in mind for the next budget year.
Thank you, Vika. Would you thank him on behalf of the town for doing that?
I already did.
Okay, thank you.
And so the last thing that I have is this weekend, effective Sunday on January 16th, we advertised that Indian Point Road, the Hook Road, is going to be closed to vehicle traffic. With the recent storm and past storms, there's a lot of washout down there, and walking down there, it is evident that it could potentially put somebody in a hard situation, and it could be dangerous for somebody if they go down there and they don't know how close they are to the edge. And so to prevent any danger to the public, to have anybody cause some kind of an accident and then have an issue of public works, or not public works, but public safety and first responders to not be able to get down there, we're closing the road for traffic. For vehicles, people are still welcome to walk down there. And we're just asking that local traffic only. At this point, what that means is the owners of Indian Island Company and Andrea Ballard, the people who own the property down there, can drive down there. But other than that, if people could please respect that, that would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Vika. Okay, anyone have a question to ask Vika? All right, seeing none. Oh, do you have your hand up, Jay? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it just not so much a question as just to say, Vika, I like the way you've used the town's emergency notification system to sort of tell people what's going on and providing some commentary. I think it's been very helpful.
Thank you. What I've been trying to do is just refer to the text alert and limit that for, emergency only. But then I've been trying to be putting more things on Facebook, because I know a lot of people are using that these days. So.
Yeah,
I think it's
that
been
those- Yeah, I think it's been great too. And I would like to also thank Erica Newman, who was instrumental in getting that emergency alert system through the Keep Maine Healthy grant. So that was great. And Vika, oh my gosh, I should have written down what I was just going to ask you. I'll come back to it later when my mind comes back. Okay, so now let's go back to the agenda. The next item is to review and sign the Cumberland County Mitigation Plan. This has to do with being eligible for FEMA funds when we have emergencies. And basically it's a boilerplate. They tell us what's what, and we sign it. If anybody has any questions about it, Vika might be able to have more information than that, but that's kind of, we do it every 5 years. Anyone have a question? Anyone in the audience have a question? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to accept this?
So moved.
Okay, so it's been moved. Is it seconded?
Second.
Okay, Jay is seconded. Moved and seconded that that the Board of Selectmen sign the Cumberland County Mitigation Plan. All right, I'm going to do a quick roll call. Mr. Beaupre,
Yes.
Ms. Beleska,
Yes.
Mr. Corson,
Yes.
Mr. Dyer,
Yes.
and I am a yes, so it's unanimous. Okay, the next is this agenda item might have been misleading. We had a problem with 2 or 3 versions of the agenda floating around. What it's supposed to say is to discuss the Wright Pierce Stone Wharf presentation and consider next steps. And so basically, I wanted to clarify because I think a lot of people were confused. What we hired Wright Pierce to do is to find out if the wharf was stable and if you could raise it to mitigate for sea level rise and climate change. That's basically what we hired them to do. They have questions before they can give us an estimate of what that would cost, and that is, what do we want to do with it? How do we want, what direction do we want to give them as a community? They have suggested that they have a consultant that they've used on some big projects like the Martins Point Bridge and also the Veterans Memorial Bridge facilitator who will work with and have community discussions and try to come up with some kind of a consensus on what people actually want to do with something and how to get more, the majority of the people at least into some direction. And this issue has been around for a long time, and we've never been able to get a community consensus about what we want to do there. And so I think that was why they were suggesting this. And so I just wanted to throw that out. And I have a name of a woman, her name's Carol Morris, and I could talk to her tomorrow or the next day and get some information and come back to you with what she might be proposing. But it's certainly up to the board if that's what they want to do, or if they want to just hold public meetings. Because right now, until Wright Pierce knows how high we want the wharf to go, I mean, they say their sweet spot's around 3.7. It's difficult for them to know how to go forward. And we know that we've got to figure out as a community, what is the priority down there? And we have several different options. Is barging the priority? Is the fishing fleet the priority? Is safety the priority? Is parking the priority? Is the ferry operation the priority? And how do they interact, and how and what will that mean in the long run? Because really this is, if you remember correctly, back when we were looking at these different options that we had, it was estimated it was about a $300,000 plan budget to determine whether the wharf was stable, and then create some kind of a final plan to go forward to actually do construction. And Wright Pierce feels that they need more input from the community as to what they want before they do much more work. So anyway, that's I'm just throwing that out there. Mark?
Yeah, I personally think it's worth your effort if you're willing to do it on behalf of this board and the town, to contact this Carol Morris, have a conversation with her, find out what she could offer to the process, if anything, and then try to get an idea of some sort of a cost or a budget that we might need for her.
Bo?
Sorry, I hit the wrong button. Just wanted to tell you, convey what Bob Ernest once again said.
I see it. Yep.
Have you
He's
considered
suggesting
using
the Island
Island
Institute.
Institute? So it might alleviate some costs as far as a consultant.
Well, actually, they charge.
Okay.
They're not charging for the housing because we're a pilot project. But and I don't know if they would want to get into this. I mean, I can talk to them. I can talk to them as well and see if it's something they could do. But this is a bigger issue than what they've been doing with housing.
Okay.
But I can easily talk to them and find out what, get a proposal from them if they're even interested in doing it. It's just not something they've done before. Jay?
Before we go hiring the next group to tell us what we should be thinking about or looking at it and coming back with suggestions, it would be nice to get from the good folks at Wright Pierce a preliminary report at least that says, here's what you can and can't do. And, and just a rough layout as to, what the possibilities are. And secondly, what is their recommendation as to how high the damn thing should be? Because that's really what we're talking about. is how much
Well,
sea
they-
level rise do you want to account for? And how high, so how high do you want to jack it up? But it would be
They
nice to
said-
see their report to tell us what they found in writing.
Well, they don't feel they have all enough information. I mean, they can answer that question. They've said 3.7 feet was the sweet spot, somewhere between 3 and 4, and their calculations say 3.7.
So
So,
their approach to this is we've done all this, but we really don't know what you want to do. So go hire somebody else to help you figure that out.
no, this person would not be helping us figure it out. They'd be finding out what this community wants. That's the problem we have. Every
That's what I
single
just
person
said.
in this community has their own idea about what the solution is at the stone wall. And so, I mean, what you're suggesting we could do is ask them to come up with a proposal, and then we discuss that proposal as a community. We could do that.
Not a series of options, given what they have determined is the structural integrity of the work.
Well, they've already said the structurally, it will hold. They told us that at the last meeting.
Right,
So,
but they said they weren't going to put it in writing because they wanted something else. I'd like to just see a draft report, if that's not asking too much.
all right, well, I can get that, I mean, I can talk to them. Jen,
I'm wondering why, this isn't put forth to a stone pier committee. Why we're not asking a group of people to spend the time to look into what direction is this going to go through to. And I mean, I kind of said it before, but what happened to Coastal Waters Committee and what, those committees and that's made up of lobstermen and community members and I just don't understand, where you had all the reports from the Collins group. Why did those reports kind of just fail? I don't remember. Was it just because nobody could agree, or
well, they were only hired to come up with concepts. And so those were just ideas that they had. And those ideas are still out there.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
the reason we
I did-
didn't have make a committee, it was decided by the Board of Selectmen at that time. We'd had about 15 stone wharf committees over the last 50 years. So the Board of Selectmen decided to be the stone wharf committee. That was basically what happened. And I can't remember when that decision was made. It might have been just before I got on the board, or it might have been right after. But it was, I'm pretty sure Herb Main was the chairman at that time. And it was determined, or maybe it was before that, because with Collins, when they looked at the stone wharf and did the study there, it was the Board of Selectmen who was looking at it. So, the question is, where do we, what's the direction? I see Carol White would like to speak, but I want to make sure the board has had a chance to talk about this. Because we have not hired Collins to come up with a plan for the wharf. What we did was we hired, not Collins, Wright Pierce, we hired them to do the stability study. Is the wharf stable? Is it going anywhere? And how? And also we hired them, how would we raise the wharf? But when it comes to where parking goes and where the boat goes and all that kind of stuff, all of those decisions have to be made. Mark?
I also am of the personal belief that this community probably needs a definitive answer from the regulatory authorities, which would be the Army Corps of Engineers, DEP, of whether there ever will be anything able to be designed and or built into the cove to the north as you're driving down. The reason I think that is once in a while, you know, myself or somebody will say, wouldn't it be nice if we could have a fill structure or a piling structure in part of that or all of that cove to help solve some of the turning radius issues and the parking issues down there. So in my opinion, it would be very helpful at some point to have some sort of a definitive answer back about whether there are any possibilities of incorporating that into a possible future design for this community or not.
And we've actually asked them, and they're in the process of contacting. Their initial response to that was that that parking is not a marine dependent use, and that if it were expanded for parking, that it would be rejected. And so they're talking to the people in Augusta, and that's going to be part of their final report when they get the answers, the final answers. But that was I asked that question, and that was their initial feeling. They said if you wanted to build onto the wharf up in the cove, you could build it for the fishermen. You could build something for the fishermen, but it doesn't do any good because you can't get up in that cove at even at high tide. You can hardly get up in that cove. So that was the big issues is something water dependent. Jen.
I think that if you throw in there that, I mean, it's all about public safety, people getting to and from the boat safely. I think that that is a game changer for all those type of things. And that's just from what I know, from what I've reached out to people to ask them about. And it should be focused on public safety.
And that's really, that's yeah.
Not just say it's for parking.
No, I'm just saying that they say you can't do it for parking. That was the point.
I just keep hearing that it can't be done. It can be done. We've been told it can't be done. And I disagree.
Okay, so that's why we're asking them to go and talk to the regulatory people and have it be part of their report, because I don't know what else we can do, because we can all have our own personal opinions, but we're hiring engineers to go to get information from us. And so what I guess my feeling is that either that by having them go to DEP, having them go to the Army Corps and find out what exactly we could do something with and what we couldn't do something with. That was their feeling about parking, that if somebody wanted to extend the wharf to add more parking, that probably would not be permitted. So they're in the process of trying to get more information. Does that help? Okay, anybody else on the board before I open it up? All right, so Carol White was first. And Jeff Putnam second.
Bob has a comment in the chat as well.
All right, he says to take the question directly to DEP. That's exactly what the engineers are doing. They're going to the DEP and the Army Corps who make those decisions. Oh, so who are you saying that should, so Bob's saying we should go? You're not saying the engineers should go? Okay, let's just, Carol? Can you unmute, Carol?
Can you hear me?
I can now. Thank
Okay,
you.
Sorry, I didn't. I guess I had to get promoted. A couple things. I talked to the selectmen. I think I came to the meeting before the holidays to let you know that there's a coastal resiliency grant program. It's a pretty big program with ARPA funds, and we've been in touch. I've gone to the training, the webinars, and I've been following the program. And the project similar, the Stone Wharf project is one of the projects that would totally qualify for the grant program that's aimed at those kinds of community projects. And the grant match varies depending on the size of the community. And since we're such a small community, it's a 10% match, which is pretty good. And it could be used to do exactly some of the things that we're talking about. And the Island Institute is pursuing this as a service provider, and that would not be at a charge to the community. In fact, that's not my understanding, that they would basically get a grant from the state to provide those services to particularly small communities like ourselves that don't have the resources. So that's kind of why it's set up that way. And so the grants are going to open shortly, and it's sort of on a similar schedule to the grant program that Michael was talking about. And I think that, we should pursue this rather than spend taxpayer money, our own taxpayer money, local taxpayer money. This seems like a good opportunity to try to get some of these questions resolved. I had a lot of concerns after hearing the presentation last week, or if it was last week, about sort of the direction that Wright Pierce was going, and even some of the values that they were, selecting for sea level rise seemed, a little bit high, and they didn't really answer the questions that I had, at least at the meeting. So I would encourage the town. I think if you remember, you did give me permission to pursue this grant opportunity, and I think that's what the community should do. I think this project is, a prime one for it. And I think we should, when we worked on the Collins project, I would say we did pursue the option of potentially decking over on the cove or extending the wharf, not necessarily, not just parking, but even the wharf portion onto the cove. And that was not a no-go. There are permits that you have to apply for, but we definitely did not get a no answer. So I think it would be unwise for Wright Pierce to keep plowing ahead without us sort of stopping and figuring out what the community preferences are so that it can guide the design choices. We've already gone through the different concept designs with the Collins study. So I think that now the time is to really figure out what our community priorities are, figure out what the design criteria is, and, then come up with a design and a cost estimate for that design. And so that's, I think Wright Pierce did a good job. They evaluated the pier. We're not at immediate risk for the pier collapsing, which I think was what, triggered that study. And so I think the next step is for the community to kind of, step in, figure out the priorities, and come up with a design. And I personally, and I understand everybody has different opinions, but personally, I think, public safety is a big concern. But obviously, this needs to be done by a group, not by just consultants. So the ferry company, the rescue services, fire, coastal waters all need to be involved in this discussion because it's a big decision. And that's one of the things this program is designed to help facilitate. So it provides funding and facilitation services. So
And when will that be implemented?
the grants are due in a couple months, and then the funding is pretty quickly after that. So we're talking 3 months.
It would be really good, Carol, if you could contact, Wright Pierce really wants to hear from people in the community about what their thoughts are and their concerns. They were concerned at the last meeting that, they didn't really feel like they've heard from much from the community. So One of the reasons I put this on the agenda tonight is so that people in the community would contact them.
Well, I kind of don't understand that process where we would contact the consultants because.
Well, if you had questions and you had suggestions, they
Well,
just,
but I mean, the consultants aren't driving the train, the community is, and I guess
they
that
want to hear from the,
discussion.
Carol, they want to hear from the
I-
community.
I don't think that that's appropriate for individuals in the community to have independent discussions with the consultant. That does not, I think the discussion needs to be in the community in a public forum and with, you know, appropriate stakeholders for us as a group, as a community to decide, you know, how to move forward with this. So I personally I don't think it's appropriate for me to call the consultant and, you know, give them my personal opinion.
Okay, thank you. All right, so before I go to Jeff Putnam, I just want to summarize. So what Carol's suggesting is that we wait on contacting the person from that was recommended by Wright Pierce to have a community forum, a community dialogue, and get the community talking about this, that we wait for the Island Institute. I'm going to call both the Island Institute and Carol Morris tomorrow, and I'll come back to the next meeting with whatever I find out from both of them. Okay, Jeff Putnam and then Matt Ridgway.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thanks. Two questions and they're separate, so I'll ask them. I'll ask one and let you reply to that. So the study that Wright Pierce did, they said kind of, I thought they quickly passed over the fact that they said that the pier could support additional weight on the surface. But did you guys get the data behind that? Like the drill, as I was there when they did all the drilling. We were working
No,
on
we
traps
did-
there.
because
But
they
did you
haven't-
get
They
the
haven't given
data
us a
from that?
report yet. We haven't, they just were doing a preliminary discussion with us. We haven't gotten the final report.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That answers that. And my next question is under this agenda item or under the correspondence agenda item, are you going to talk about the spectrum of comments that you've received as the Board of Selectmen since the Wright Pierce?
We can talk about it now. I sent your letter to them and they were going to reach out to you. Did they?
No, they didn't. But I meant from, I mean, yes, I wrote a letter that I sent to you guys and Wright Pierce, but were there other community members that have reached out to the Board of Selectmen about their opinion since then? Since the Wright Pierce?
For me personally, and I can only speak for myself, I heard from Aaron Rue and you, and that was it. Is there anybody else on the board who heard from someone else? Everybody's shaking their head no.
Okay, yeah, that's all I was wondering, how many people had chimed in and what their input was. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And that was why Wright Pierce wanted to know what people were thinking here. And we do too. We need to understand, where people are coming from. Okay, so we have, the next one is Matt and then Erica.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So I would, after listening to this conversation and hearing how the study went with Wright Pierce, I would tend to agree with Carol, as much as having been part of and gone to a lot of meetings when the sunset committees were going on and the Stone Wharf, then the comparison of uses of those committees were happening. I think that may be the appropriate process now, hopefully in an expedited form, for deciding what the priorities would be for the Stone Wharf and what a final design would look like. I think that, you know, the Collins concepts could be part of that. And hopefully there's a committee that could get together and act quickly and be sort of nimble enough to come up with a, you know, priorities from the immediate stakeholders. And we'd be able to get something together quickly. And I kind of am not optimistic about it being quickly, but I think that seems to me to be the next logical step here, is for the stakeholders to get together and really look at what the last engineers that kind of did the stability test were and what the Collins engineers came up with. And then I think that the next step after that is to present a couple of options or 3 options to the community for a vote and to decide where we're going to go with this. I think that this type of thing can't be decided, you know, entirely by committee, but to come up with a couple good options to present to the community to vote. You know, this is where we want to go with this. This is not where we want to go with this. Is really the next step. I would be happy, and CTC would be happy to participate in that committee as much as necessary to expedite this. I think that as we've seen, you know, this last storm, and I'm not going to be dramatic about it, but this last storm was a pretty moderate tide. It was less than a 9-foot tide, and it was over the pier. You know, this is not something that should wait 5 years. This is not something that should wait 10 years. And like Carol said as well, like there's an abundance of grant money that's going to be coming available here, and we should take advantage of it as a community. So yeah, again, I'd be happy to be part of this. CTC would be happy to be part of this, and happy to meet as much as necessary to move quickly on this. So that's just my thoughts.
Thank you, Matt. One of the things we're waiting for too, and it can be happening I suppose at the same time, is to what the actual cost will be. They're working on that right now of raising the wharf. And the question is, it will depend on how high you raise it. Erica. Oh, wait a second, Mike's got his hand up and then we'll get Erica on.
Well, I wanted to ask you permission to ask Matt a question, but he already got off.
Okay. Well, you want to ask the question?
Well, my question was very simple. How many people would he envision being on this working group? And what would the makeup or stakeholders requirement or description be?
Yeah, so I think that to me, it would make sense to have, like Carol suggested, somebody from the fire and rescue, somebody from CTC, somebody from the Board of Selectmen, somebody from the Coastal Waters Committee, and hopefully a representative of the fishing community on the island. I think that would have been ideal for the Collins project, and I think that makes a lot of sense for this project.
Thank you, Matt. But Matt,
Thank
you've
you, Matt.
forgotten the major stakeholders. The major stakeholders are the regular people who live in this community. So we can't forget that. So any committee would have to have people at large, in addition to the people who, you know, might have a vested interest, because everyone in the community has a vested interest. So usually what you do is, you know, you have different slots for different positions and then have several people who might, you know, 2 or 3 people added in who just are general. Eric, bring Erica back.
She should be all set.
Okay, great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I first thank you to the Board of Selectmen for ushering in another wave of this. I'll start my video. I don't know about my internet, so yeah. Just wanted to acknowledge you to move this forward. As you said, Donna, there's a long history here. I felt I didn't get a chance to listen to it live, so I listened to it today and looked at the presentation, and I felt that this was a major breakthrough for Shebig. I think that for anyone coming into the discussion, it puts you to a moment now in January 2022. It gave history, it gave data, it answered the incredibly important question that from the last big waves, which was, is the stone pier viable? And I heard a resounding yes. If you look at the chart and you read it again, it is absolutely, they bored, they're going to give a final report, but that the questions that were out there about what were, with everything from the diagrams to the data, I thought that the overview slide of whether it's viable to build there, we answered that in this, which is serious progress in 2022. I also heard, I thought it underscored everything that the selectmen has just said, which there are 3 goals to this project: safety, transportation, and commerce. And I thought they addressed that as well. And then with regards to Carol White, I couldn't agree more. I think the Island Institute that is their strike zone, is to facilitate a community dialogue. They do an excellent job. They capture comments. They would capture everything from the formal letters to breakout groups. That's what they're best at doing. I think that the amount of information they could glean from even 3 public meetings would be exactly what we need right now, because I think that there are 4 things that they left us with. Right, Pierce? If I were on their side as a consultant, I would be waiting for, what is the community's will on height? There's a slide on height with many, many resources that Carol points to. Are you going to go with the Climate Council? Are you going to go with DEP? That there has to be a community will that's going to be in the gray zone. It's not going to be black and white, who we stand against, whether we go to 4 feet or 6 feet. The second community will discussion is about, what's your timeline? Do you want something built to a 100-year standard or a 50-year standard? They cut the difference. They went to 2070. They answered questions about the viability of the material. Mark asked about the concrete and, was there any other modern material? But I thought that they need to know, okay, so what's the will of this community? How far do you want us to push it? Do you like these metal, pylons, or, and then the third is design. They gave 2 designs. So having a community facilitator neutral take people's thoughts in, from Bo's thoughtful comments about where the gangway would be, or I think that there's enough details for the community to respond to, and so many more of the fundamental questions that have been asked for the up till now, that this, I think they put us to today. They put us back out of the past, thinking a little bit about the future, but they put us to today with 4 decisions about height, the length, the design, and then ultimately the cost. So I think that a public process with the Island Institute is exactly what we need. I'm so impressed with how far we've gotten, and I want to thank everyone who's involved to make it happen. And I think we are way closer than we have ever been. If we're to the position where we're actually responding to designs of a heart of our community, and we now know that it's viable to actually look at designs, and we're looking at the type of design and cost, I think I applaud everyone who got us to here. And I think I'm really optimistic that with the Island Institute and 3 to 5 community sessions, we would be in a position to make decisions. Thanks.
So are you suggesting that before we consider actually having a committee, that we have the community dialogue?
I don't know what slows it down. I mean, a committee, if committees on this island, in my perspective, my view, do great work if you get the right people. They get stuff done. It would be, I guess, I don't know what you call it, a committee or a working group with a deadline. I'd defer to you on what the structure is, but I think that a public process, I'm using the Island Institute housing discussions. There's been 2, and they've already had 30 to 40 people with so many ideas, and they've been capturing them. They're on a Google Docs. It's very, very orderly, very, I think, professional. I think you could go either way. But I think that you're much further than you realize. I think we have the goals, we have the design, and we have viability. So I think I should stop talking.
Thank you, Erica. Is there someone else in the audience who would like to say something? All right, well, I think the first step is talking to the engineers and kind of relaying this information. They'll be able to go on and listen to the conversation. Getting in touch with the Island Institute, and I also will still get in touch with Carol Morris just so we can compare what they have to say, and then come back to the next meeting for next steps. Bo?
Yeah, I also think that it sounds like people want us to try to create a committee, and I think we're at the point where the stability study gave us some good ideas for the end of the pier. We need to integrate that with Collins' design, and I don't think it should be on Wright Pierce to try to meld those two together and get what we want. So I think a committee at this point will be needed to meld those two together, talk to DEP, see what we can do as far as over the cove, see what we can do as expanding the pier to get a safe turning radius. You know, not even talking about parking. I don't just to make it so that it's safe to go down there. So I think at this point we need to try to create a new Stone Pier committee with a specific charge to design or compile the information and design a new whatever we can do down there, basically.
And, and I can see where you're coming from. I guess where I'm coming from is I think we should have the community dialogue, and then the committee will have at least a sense of where people are going. Because if you have a committee, and then we've done this about all these different options before, and the committee comes up with something, and then everybody starts throwing the hand grenades. So if you have some community discussion before you get into the committee, at least people know. With all of those Collins plans, every one of them had hand grenades thrown at them. And so we've got to come up with a general concept first, and then have a committee try to narrow it down or something. I think it's worth at least having a community dialogue and see if we can get some kind of consensus, and then have them. I'm not going to put Herb Main on the spot. He doesn't have to answer this if he doesn't want to, but I know he was. It was really his direction and his leadership that made us decide to have the Board of Selectmen really take the lead in this. And I'm trying to remember what the rationale was. But, and Herb, you don't have to respond if you don't want to, but we did have that discussion about, how to go with this. And I guess he's not interested, but and like I said, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Herb. But let's people have time to think about this for the next meeting, and then we'll come back and we'll have an agenda item, and we'll try to make a decision on how to go forward. Does that make sense?
Yes.
We'll have a little bit more information. Hopefully we'll have a little bit more information from Collins, and and it would be helpful. I know people are writing stuff in the chat, but it would be really helpful if people just raise their hand and just, if you've got something to say, please raise your hand. Don't just put it in the chat, because we're missing stuff, and there's like different pieces. So I don't know if Bob Ernest would like to say something. I'm willing to let you come up, Bob, if you have. I know you've got 2 or 3 questions here, and I don't think we've fairly covered them. Yeah, he's got his hand up. Can you unmute? Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. I didn't mean to put you on. I'm not trying to put people on the spot here. I just want to make sure everybody gets a chance to, get their points across.
Thank you, Donna. And I didn't realize that the preference was for comments as opposed to chat. So just briefly, I think the question of parking isn't a valid question in and of itself without looking at the overall needs that the community wants from the stone pier. And to take the approach that we've asked the consultant who was asked to look at the structural stability of the pier to, by the way, could you talk to the DEP and see if we can entertain parking? I don't think that does the question justice, as opposed to, after the community input, coming up with a preferred design or 2 or 3 preferred designs, and then with help from our legislators and bringing to bear all of the resources that we can to approach the authorities and say, here's what we need to do for our community. How can you help us do this? And to approach the whole project, not just as a, can we raise the pier, but can we improve the stone pier to achieve the goals that we need to? I think a public discussion to bring what we learned from Collins and to bring what we've now learned from the current consultant to the table, that's organized as a public workshop where people have postcards in the mail that say, please attend if you want to share your opinion on this, would be a great way to get that process rolling. So thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, is there anyone else here who would like to say something about the stone wharf before we move on? And I'm not trying to cut off discussion, but I just don't want, I don't want to leave anybody out who has anything they want to say. Okay, so we'll revisit this next time. Hopefully we'll have more information. We'll have information from the Island Institute about what they think they could do. And hopefully the engineers will have a more specific information. And we will be able to continue to push this forward. And as Erica said, I do think we've gone a long ways. The fact that we can answer that question, which many people knew anyway, that that the wharf was not going to fall in. I think that's really important, because that takes that hand grenade off the table. All right, the next one.
Donna, I have a quick question before you move over. I know the conversation came up briefly about contacting Carol Morris. Is that off the table? She is not.
I'm still going to call her and get information. I'm going to get information from her and the Island Institute. And I'll bring back both so people can make a decision. Okay, the next is 2211. And this, again, this should have said to reconsider the purchase of a shelter for the town ambulance from Shelter Logic. And the reason it should say to reconsider, because this was already voted on by the board. So someone who voted in the affirmative to do it can make a motion to reconsider. And so I'm asking, is there it was requested that this become an agenda item. Is there someone who would like to make that motion to reconsider the decision? Jen?
I make a motion that we reconsider purchasing the shelter, so that we wait and check in when Jerry and myself and Vika go to the town garage and discuss things with the guys up there. I just don't think we have enough information, and I have also talked to Vika, and it's going to cost a lot of money, first of all, for said shelter, and that doesn't include transportation costs, and so it could exceed that amount that we had voted on. So I think we need to wait a bit.
Okay, so you're making a motion to reconsider?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, and just to clarify, Jen, you voted to fund it initially?
Initially, yes.
Yep, okay, thank you. I just want to make sure the record is straight, so if anybody comes back. All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Now for discussion about about the hoop house? Mark?
Vika, have you given this any thought yet, or talked to the town garage crew, or the town garage, or any other place that this vehicle could be stored other than where it is right now?
I did the initial research in terms of figuring out how much it would be and what, based on the size that was needed. It's information that Justin had provided to me, so I was just following up on that. And determined roughly how much it was going to be. And that's when the question was raised as far as the cost potentially exceeding when you take into the consideration the barging and transportation and whatnot. And then I also did bring up the question to Public Works as to whether it could be stored there. And their response was, we have a number of vehicles that we would like to get in to have be maintenance and have be housed inside the Public Works. So at this point, the preference is if we can house Public Works equipment in the Public Works garage versus fire department equipment. Because they are quickly running out of space in there. Through that discussion, I also had a discussion with Chuck about how he hopes that one of these days the town office staff is able to make a trip over there and try to clear out some old records that are stored from the town office because it's beginning to overpile. So long story short is, yeah, they would prefer if that ambulance does not live there because they do have other equipment that they would like to put in and make space for.
So Vika,
you.
do they plan to take out the town truck that no one will drive?
So
I understand that's in there.
once the truck 6 leaves, they'll be able to put the grader and the broom truck back in the building, and they would like to have their equipment in there before the ambulance. The boom truck needs some maintenance this summer, and they're hoping that there's room in the garage for that in there to be able to perform that.
Just in the winter, I mean, if I don't know that much about how you store stuff, but I've has been outside anyway. If you took that truck out, and I don't know what we're gonna do with it, but I think we need to be looking at getting rid of, oh, I'm sorry, my internet's not stable. That I think that we need to figure out how to get rid of that. What I'm wondering is, could the ambulance be in there for the winter in the bad months and then come out in the summer when they need to work on the boom truck or whatever they need to work on? Because, you know, we're a small town, and I think that we've got, and this has been a problem that was carried over from Cumberland, that we have all of these silos in this community, whether it's the fire and rescue or the Public Works or the cemetery or, you know, the town office or whatever. We're all one town. And how do we figure out how to share resources? I guess that's one of the questions that I have. And I don't really have a dog in this fight about the hoop house and the ambulance, but it's just raising a point to me that, you know, we have to make sure that we're not so territorial that we can't solve problems for the whole town. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. But that's just my own personal opinion. Bo.
I'd like to set Vika in charge of coming up with a decision, letting us know what she plans on doing with the ambulance, and then that's it. That's what we do. Because this is getting ridiculous talking about a hoop thing. That we've talked about this for a year now. So I think let's just have Vika come up with an idea, come to us with the idea, implement it, and that's it. We're done.
Mark?
I'll simplify it even more for you, if I may. This vote is simply to reconsider the purchase of the Shelter Logic House. It has nothing to do with where the ambulance stays tonight, tomorrow, or a year from now. So I suggest we separate the two things and focus on what we're voting on.
Thank you. Thank you. So that's a good point. All right, so do we have any input from the attendees? Anybody have their hand up? Oh, yes, Bob Ernest has his hand up.
Hello again. A couple things. One, I agree with the comments that Donna made about silos. And I think this is an issue where leadership has to take control. Asking Bob, for example, if he has room in his garage for his sister-in-law's golf cart may not bring an answer that's in the best interest of the entire family. And poor analogy, but in similar fashion, I think it's up to either Vika or the select board to make a decision about the importance of housing the road grader inside versus the importance of housing a second ambulance inside. And I'm not advocating one or the other. Like Donna, I got no dogs in this fight. So that's just my input. A little bit of data. I believe the Tart barn that you're looking at is similar to the one that I just built on my land on North Road. So I had shared the cost that I paid with Ralph, and I assume that made its way to you guys. But I can also tell you about the freight. It didn't get barged out. It got brought out on Casco Bay lines on 2 pallets. And I was able to carry each of them on my little tractor. So town staff could definitely carry them on their big tractor. And the total freight cost from Casco Bay lines was $111.50. The freight from the supplier to Casco Bay lines is included in the price. So the total freight cost was $111.50. Just FYI.
Thank you, Bob. All right, anyone else in the audience? So as Mark so rightly said, we're just voting on, do we want to put a hold on the hoop house? Or do we want to authorize Vika to order the hoop house? That's really where we are. Anybody have anything else they want to say before we vote? Bo?
Yes.
Oh, no, I'm not taking a vote. You said you have something you want to say.
No, I'm done.
All right. Vika?
Do you want my personal opinion as to whether or not it should be ordered?
Yes.
So having been in the town office for the last year and having listened to this discussion and having watched that ambulance sit outside and having seen how long it's going to take for this thing to be delivered, which the one that I looked at through Shelter Logic, it was going to be a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks. By the time it comes, it's going to be spring, it's going to be summer. And so at this point, personally, I feel like if the discussion has gone on this long, I don't see the point in spending the money and in ordering it. It's, for the size that you're looking for, it's 10,000 potentially plus dollar expense. And through the recent months of the discussion, seeing all of the work that even the electrical is going to need in this building, I think there's going to be places where the money is going to be needed. And I think that there's going to be, there should be an alternative decision or, something decided or come up with to determine how to better store that thing. But right now for this year, there is no saving it for this winter. By the time that thing arrives, it's going to be spring and it's going to be beautiful and it's going to be nice out. So I personally just don't see the point in spending money in it right now.
Thank you. All right. So if there's no more discussion, I'm going to call for a vote. Mr. Beaupre?
Yes.
Ms. Boleska?
Yes.
Mr. Dyer?
No.
Mr. Corson?
sorry, the vote's to reconsider, correct?
Right,
I vote for that. Yes.
all right, and I'm voting to reconsider. Okay, so we have 4 votes to reconsider. So now we need a motion on, we're reconsidering. So what's the next motion? Bo,
I move that we charge Vika into coming up with a solution and then telling the board and implementing it.
is there a second to that? Okay, there's no second.
Sure.
I think that probably an appropriate motion would be to tell the town administrator not to order the hoop house at this time. That, I mean, I think that's what the question. Then people can vote yes or no on it. Mark,
I'll be very brief, I promise. But at some point, I would like to know if this vehicle is going to continue to sit outside, how many times it's being used and why we need it.
well, and that was my concern in the first place when we kept it. And that's been my concern right along. That along with the truck that no one will drive. I mean, it's like we collect equipment. And if there were an emergency tonight and they needed 2 ambulances, that one does not have any of the equipment in it. It's not ready to go. So somebody's gonna have to go out and fill it up and get it ready. And so and by that time you could take one person to the wharf and go get another one. I don't know. I've never understood it myself. So no, so we don't have a second to Bo's. So is somebody gonna make a motion? Because if no one makes a motion, we voted to reconsider. So what are we reconsidering? Are we going or not going to get to buy the hoop house? Whoa,
All right. I move that we move ahead with ordering the hoop house. And until we get the hoop house, the ambulance gets parked in the town garage.
all right. Is there someone who seconds that?
Well, I don't know that I'm seconding it. I was gonna ask for clarification.
You could ask for a clarification.
I thought the last vote voted down ordering the hoop house.
No, that was just to reconsider. We had to have a motion to reconsider.
I thought that was the motion.
No, the motion was to reconsider, and we're reconsidering right now. It didn't mean voting yes or no. So we had to.
Sorry.
That's okay, no problem. Jen,
Make a motion that we do not order the hoop house.
is there a second to that? Okay, Jay has seconded it. Now discussion. Is there any more discussion on ordering the hoop house? Anybody from the, nope, nobody in the audience. All right, I'm gonna call for a vote. Mr. Beaupre,
No.
okay, Ms. Beleska,
Yes.
Mr. Dyer,
No,
Mr. Corson,
Yes.
and I'm yes. So it passes. We don't order the hoop house right now. All right, let's move on quickly. Bogged down in that one. Okay, to update the personnel handbook to include the annual Juneteenth holiday. The state of Maine has declared that Juneteenth, which is the 14th of June, which was the date where the last people, African Americans who were in Texas, found out that the war had ended and that they were free. And so it has been a holiday for years in Texas, and it is in several states in the union, including Maine. So it was requested that this be added to the agenda. Is there a motion? Bo?
Is it a state holiday?
Yes.
Can I
Yeah.
just make a correction? It's actually June 19th,
Oh, I'm
and it is
sorry.
a state and federal holiday.
I didn't think it was a federal. Are you sure it's a federal holiday?
I looked it up today.
Okay,
So it's going to be Sunday, June 19th, 2022. And the
Whoa.
only reason that this is coming up to the agenda is because we followed the state holiday closures. And so
Right.
if we want to be in line with the state holiday closures, we need to add this one on.
Yeah, thank you for correcting me on the date. Bo,
I move that we update the personal handbook to include the annual Juneteenth holiday.
is there a second? Jen? So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I don't see any discussion from the board. I can't seem to scroll my thing. Do you see anybody, Vika, that has a question in the,
I just have a question, Donna.
oh, sure, thank you.
To change the personnel handbook, does that have to go to a town vote?
No, that's an internal document.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I'm going to call for a vote. Mr. Beaupre,
Yes.
Ms. Beleska,
Yes.
Mr. Dyer,
Yes.
Mr. Corson,
I guess my thought is, why not?
and I'm a yes, so it's unanimous. Okay, now, finally, is to consider a community-wide mailing with updated COVID testing and support information. And this was recommended by the CART committee. Last week they had a meeting because it came up that there are folks on the island who have had COVID, who need supplies or maybe need help with food or need to know where you can get test kits and that kind of thing. And so they just thought sending out a postcard with some information would be a good idea just to remind people. In fact, today, someone from the food pantry was working with me at the museum, and they were taking a bundle of food to someone who is home alone with COVID. So that's where this is coming from. Vika has a draft of that. I think you circulated that, right, Vika?
I did, yes, I sent it to you, but then today there was another addition that the CART committee made, and that just simply adding the link of the website where people can go and get free COVID tests to be sent to
Okay.
them.
Yeah. All right. So is there any discussion on this? Bo,
Where's the cost of this coming out of?
well, it's like $82. I suppose it could come out of Selectmen's contingency, but there's probably enough money in administration.
With something like this in the past, we've just used the postage account under admin because the only expense that's going into it really is the stamps, and any stamps we buy, it goes under admin postage.
And does that have to be in the motion?
It could be if you wanted it to.
Because it's not coming out of an actual account, it's coming out of regular. So,
Yeah, so you can be clear in that. Why don't you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to consider a community-wide mailing, updated COVID testing and support information to come out of administrative account, postage account. Sorry.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay. Mark seconded. All right. Anybody have any questions on the board? I don't see any. I don't see any in the audience. Okay, Mr. Beaupre,
Yes.
Ms. Beleska.
Alexa's got her hand up.
Eliza Jane has her hand up. Sorry.
Okay. I think this is, unless you have something that's either add something to this, because I think everybody's going to vote for this, but I can't. Can you bring her up?
Yeah, I just did.
Okay. You have to unmute.
Yep. Hi, I just wanted to say that as the person who disseminates masks, I hear a lot of positive comments from the community about the fact that the town of Shubeek has been supplying masks and how important that is. This is really reiterating that. The reason for the card was that people are still unclear sometimes at where to get tested. And so this just makes that clear. And even though it's still a moving target, that masks will now be available from the federal government as well as testing, I think it's important still to provide those on the island. We certainly have enough to last for a while, and that's all I have to say. I wanted to say I hear a lot of appreciation from the community. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for all you do. Okay, so let's now take a vote. Bo,
Yes.
Jen? Oh, she's muted. Mark,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes,
and I'm yes. And Jen? Why don't we say 4 and 1 abstention? So we can move on. Is that okay? All right. So that's passed. Okay, so the next item, oh, Jen, are you back? Can you unmute? Jen? Okay, I don't know what's going on there. All right, so the next is communication. Do you have any communications, Vika, that we haven't already discussed?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Is there anyone else who has any discussion, any questions that, any communication that we haven't discussed? Okay, seeing none, let's just go on to approve the minutes. Could we have a motion to approve the minutes of January 5th?
So
so
moved.
moved.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to accept the minutes of January 5th. So we'll quickly take, Bo,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes,
Jay,
Yes,
and I'm yes. Jen, while you were gone, we voted on the mailing and we just said you abstained because we couldn't find you. So we didn't want to we didn't want you to think we were leaving you out. Okay, did you have any communications that you wanted to bring up? We just kind of passed through that. No one really had any. Okay. So items to be placed on future agendas. I attended MMA webinar today on affordable housing. And they've got quite a few programs that are available. And we have been doing this housing series. And one of the issues that they talked about was that if you have ARPA funds that you are willing to put towards one of these programs that has grants, that it puts you higher up on the priorities. Now, if you remember correctly, when Justin was here, he talked about the ARPA grants. These are the ones that every town got something. Well, some towns got 8 and 15 million, but we got 32,000. So I'm going to put this on the agenda at the next meeting, that we consider using some of that money to, if in case we have an opportunity for a grant for this, because this 32,000 is going to do nothing as far as the stone wharf or something like that goes. But anyway, it's not to be debated tonight, but I just wanted to say it's going to be on a future agenda. Jay?
just like to point out that the broadband committee already used that in its budget.
They did?
Yep.
Did we approve it?
No, it wasn't that we approved. We haven't approved anything for broadband, but that was part of their calculation.
Yeah, well, then we
So-
can,
There's $18,271 on that rescue plan account.
okay, so where did the rest of it go?
I'm not sure, but I can find out.
That's good. So between now and the next meeting, we'll have more information. Thank you very much. Okay, anything else somebody wants to have on a future agenda? We've talked about, we're gonna have more about the Stone Wharf and the Island Institute perhaps facilitating some community discussions. Bo,
Michael Porter had his hand up. I'm assuming.
oh, okay, Michael? Can you bring Michael up? Thank you, Bo.
Okay, about the, that ARPA money. The broadband committee has not chosen to use that money. It was put in a theoretical budget by Mark Willett as a possibility. We have not planned to use it. We figured we don't want to be competing with other requirements in the town. As to the reason why it's only 18,000 instead of 36,000, the other 18,000 comes in next year. I have found out,
Oh, okay, thank you, Michael.
just to clarify.
Yeah, they were talking on this, in this program, this webinar today, about how they determined if a community was rural. And they said a lot of it depended on how little ARPA money they got. And they said, like, if you got 100,000, they would assume you were really rural. And I'm thinking, we only got 36,000. We must be really, really, really in the sticks if that was the case. But anyway, thank you, Michael, for that clarification. Okay, anyone else have anything for a future agenda? All right, seeing none. We are about to go into executive session. I would like to thank everyone who came today and participated. We will need a motion to go into executive session. If the rest of you could just sign off, that would be great. Is there someone on the board who would like, Bo?
I'd like to move that we move to executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056A personnel and take any resulting actions after, and 1 MRSA 4056C acquisition of real property and take any resulting actions.
Okay, so it's been moved. Is it seconded?
Second,
All right, I'm gonna do a quick roll call. Bo
Yes.
and Jay,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Mark,
yes.
and me. All right, we're all, you got that, Rico? It was unanimous. All right, so there's a,
Sorry, the recording's still on.
Oh,
oh,
thank you.